Hey Tigers, Tony here. This week we are out of the studio and in the Tiger ship. So today we got a lot of great topics to cover. I think you'll really get a lot out of the strategies and tools that we talk about this week. So let's jump into it. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? First, we're going to talk about one of my favorite tools called the VSEM. And this tool really kicks things up a notch. It really levels up your understanding of the program and really is a way to get you to act strategically. Then we're going to build an example of a VSEM using our favorite Tiger coffee machine company. Then we're going to go into the value proposition, and this is really essential for your understanding of how your program is going to be valued by customers. And then finally, we're going to go into a tool I use called the Stakeholder Analysis, where I address any kind of possible risks that might arrive from cross-group collaboration. All right, let's talk about the VSEM. So again, this answers the question, how do I know what to do and am I successful? Because when it gets down to it, that is kind of like any business problem you want to address. All right, so the purpose of the VSEM is to visualize your program from start to finish. Sometimes you don't have to make one. Sometimes actually marketing or product management has already done this and they can make it available to you. However, sometimes you need to build this yourself. Now, this is especially true if you're developing a program from scratch. However, I have to tell you that even if I'm taking over an existing program, to make sure I get that depth of understanding, I will create a VSEM. And then finally, it's a great way to understand not only the depth of the program, but I use VSEMs to sell my ideas to leadership. And then finally, and this is a key point, VSEMs need to be short and concise. Make them simple, but as possible, but not any simpler, right? If you're creating a long PowerPoint or a huge white paper or a 50-page Word doc, you're not doing a VSEM. All right? All right. So now let's jump into vision, right? And the important thing about the vision is it's really aspirational, right? And it's your ultimate outcome that you expect to have. So I figured the best way to kind of understand what a vision is, let's look at visions from successful companies. All right, Tesla. Their vision is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. Now remember, these visions are big, grandiose. Starbucks is to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. One of my favorites is Microsoft. The Microsoft vision is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. So off the top of my head, I figured our Tiger Coffee Company vision could be personalized coffee experience anywhere in the world. All right? When we go into an example, we'll go more in depth in that. Then we come to the strategy. Now, the strategy is really how you will achieve your goals. So, this can be the name of the strategy you are deploying, as well as an outline of what resources need to be used. If you can't articulate a strategy in less than 30 words, it's not a strategy. So, let's go over some examples. Tesla's strategy is transforming the auto industry as a whole. Starbucks uses a branding strategy that consists of consistent experience, maintain an ethical reputation, and high-quality products and merchandise. And Microsoft, which has probably changed now thanks to AI, but when I made this, it was cloud first, mobile first. All right, and you really kind of see that these companies are fulfilling their strategies. All right, execution. This is where the rubber hits the road. It outlines your critical initiatives, the programs, actions you need to take to support the strategy. Right? An example that we could use is, all right, as part of our execution for our Tiger Coffee Company, we're going to hire an AI consulting service to build a platform on Azure Cognitive Services. All right, very tactical. But it has to support the strategy and the strategy has to support the vision. All right, let's get down to metrics. Everyone's heard the thing, if you're not measuring it, you're probably not doing it. So metrics establish a system of measurement to track the progress of your program. Right? And it's very important when you see the results of your metrics. You have to, it's really to also drive the idea that you might need to revisit your vision, might need to revisit your strategy, and you might need to revisit your execution, because you could be measuring the wrong thing. And the example is of a metric for our example is the Tiger coffee machines deployed on time, like how many are deployed on time. All right, let's go into an in-depth example for the VSEM tool. This is for Tiger coffee machines. So the vision I kind of landed on was coffee drinkers will always be able to order coffee from their friendly barista in any city in the world. All right? The strategy is we're going to deploy automatic AI coffee machines into convenience stores. There's a lot of convenience stores, so that gives us locations. Now, execution, right? We're going to partner with multinational retail convenience stores. They'll house our machines. We'll support the supply chain management and provide them with network bandwidth. We're also going to contract NCR Corporation to design and build the automatic AI coffee machines. They're well known for ATMs. We're going to offer franchise opportunities to coffee roasters. We're going to run a social media campaign, and then of course you have to have business goals. That's going to be our execution. Metrics. Now I'm not going to go over every metric, but you can kind of see how this fits in with the execution, which fits in with the strategy, which fits in with the vision. Right? So, for example, the metric for retail convenience stores, number of locations. When we contract NCR Corporation, we want to know how many machines they can build per month. Franchise enrollment, number of franchisees that sign up. Social media campaign, number of customers that sign up. And business goals, of course. These are kind of Captain Obvious. Sales revenue, customer acquisition, customer retention. All right? All right, up next, the value proposition, also one of my favorite things. Hey Tigers, I'm back. I'm on the bridge of the Tiger ship, and today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that's the value proposition. I'll probably make several videos on this because there are so many uses where this comes in, but today we're going to focus on the value proposition in the program management framework. I'm going to go to my ready room and let's get started. All right, let's talk about why the value proposition is so important. Well, in net, you should always be able to answer why someone should spend their time and resources working with you. All right, so then what is a value proposition? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's a promise. It's a promise that a product, service, brand, or company makes to their target audience. And I'll talk about the target audience next, but that's really important. So what does a strong value proposition have? First of all, it provides more benefit than the perceived cost, right? People are only going to do something if it's worth it to them. It's better than the competition. You might be able to successfully provide a benefit that's greater than the cost, but if your competition does better, there's not a strong value proposition. Now, it gets the target audience to act the way you want them to. And then finally, it also gives you the ability to understand the customer needs and how to meet those needs. All right, let's talk about the anatomy of a value proposition. Now, stick with me here. I want you to kind of think of a seesaw, and depending on how it goes, that is whether you'll have a strong value proposition or a weak value proposition. And in the blue boxes is what the company does. And in the orange boxes, that's what the customer experiences. All right. So let's start with the blue boxes. First I must mention the target audience. So this is very important. A value proposition doesn't work for every target audience, right? So be very specific in your target audience. Like, for example, you might be targeting females between 25 and 35 that make $75,000 to $300,000. All right, that's very different than females 50 and older that make $10 million a year. All right, let's talk about the blue boxes. So the first thing is you got to have a promise, right? And that promise needs to really benefit the target audience. Then you have a differentiation, right? So whatever promise you make really needs to differentiate yourself from the competition. And then when you make your promise and you have your competitive differentiation, you need to have evidence to support that claim. All right, so as a company, that's what you're going to develop. Now, when it goes over to the orange boxes, when we talk about the customer, there's a price. There's going to be a cost for that customer to use your product or service. There's also a risk. By going to you, they're not going to another company. So there's some adoption risk for the target audience. And finally, there's an effort involved. Now, you see at the bottom a good value proposition and a poor value proposition. That's where the seesaw comes in, right? So if it goes down on the good value proposition side, the customer views that your product or service has a good value prop. All right, let's look at an example using our Tiger Coffee company. So remember, a value proposition is also data-driven. And as I mentioned before, that data should show you that the benefit outweighs the costs. A weak value proposition fails to convince the target audience that there is a benefit that outweighs their cost. All right, so our promise is going to be consistent, personalized experience every time you buy coffee. What's going to differentiate us from the customer is that when you walk up to the machines anywhere in the world, we're going to use facial recognition and AI, and you'll have this customized digital avatar that you'll always meet, regardless of where the coffee machine is, and they'll make you a perfect cup of Joe when you approach. And the support is that these retail coffee houses will increase and maintain their customers when the customer feels like they belong. All right, that's kind of the support, the evidence we have. Now, there is a price. There's a time for signing up for the service and the cost of food. There is a risk. The service might not be available in your city or area. And there is an effort. So you have to download the mobile app, enter all your information to create a profile, do a facial scan using a mobile device. So there is a setup cost. Let me get out of the way there so you can see that. All right. If all goes well, our promise, differentiated, and support is stronger than the price, risk, and effort, and we'll have a good value proposition. Hey Tigers, we're back. This will be the last concept for this section, and we're going to talk about a tool that I use called the stakeholder analysis. Now, the purpose of the stakeholder analysis is really to identify your colleagues or teams that might threaten the success of your program. Now, let's remember, just because somebody is a blocker does not necessarily mean that they're against you or your program. They might not understand what you're trying to accomplish, which that is probably on you to make that clear. More often than not, they might not have the resources to assist you. Or third, you might be going towards the wrong team, right? Your program might not be in their scope of work. However, let's look at truth in the face. There are people in corporate America that are working against you for personal and childish reasons, so you have to be able to address that head on. Stakeholder analysis works best as a team effort, so you should not just be trying to identifying all the colleagues and rate where they're at. Really talk to your manager and your coworkers for input. And finally, it's good to do as early as possible in a program. You don't want to do this when you've been working on something for 6 months and been stuck. Ideally, you do it at the beginning, and then you have check-ins and so forth. All right, let's go to the tool. All right, so what you see here is a template that I use when I'm reviewing other stakeholders or teams that I'm going to be working with in my program. All right, so the first thing is the obvious. You need to identify the team or person you're working with. And we'll go into an example on the next slide. Then you need to assess the level of importance that this team or people are to your project. Now notice there's high, medium, and low. And the reason why you do that is because you can't do everything at once. So the first team or individuals that you want to address first is the ones that are high. And then after you address all the people that are high, you go to medium and so on. And then when you look at their current level of support for change, like how willing are they to assist you or collaborate with you, again, notice it's high, medium, and low. So the first team or person or stakeholder you go after, level of importance of the project high, and then the next one, current level of support low, because you want this to be high. And when you have high, low, that's when you have a challenge. And then you think about, okay, well, what if we do nothing? What if we maintain in the same current position, right? And if there's no change, you might not even have to work with those people or that team. And then you try to identify, all right, what's the blocker here? So identify the stakeholder's barrier. Because if you can help them remove that barrier, you might have a lot of success. Then once you identify the barrier, you want to really kind of decide what you have to do to move this stakeholder from unfavorable to a favorable position. Then you schedule the activity, right? You want to make sure you follow up and actually take action. And of course, the team contact, right? And if you can't identify who the person to talk to, speak to your manager or their manager and so on. All right, let's go on to an example. All right, so here is a Tiger coffee machine. I did a stakeholder analysis, very simple, and let's go through it. All right, so the first team or person here is operations, right? And they're critically important because they're typically the people that will run your program. I also have marketing here and the legal department. And as I move to the next one, you can see that operations are high, marketing is medium, and the legal department is high. So obviously, the first two teams you want to address any type of blockers with is operations and the legal department. Then we move over to the current level of support. So here you have operations. They're very important, but looks like they're not going to give you very much support. Whereas the legal team, they're very important, but they're going to give you a lot of support. So I don't anticipate any issue there. So your target stakeholder to really collaborate with is operations. Now, we look at what happens if we don't do anything. We remain in the same position. All right, if we don't do anything, operations is not going to help us. So that's a critical thing to identify. Legal department, if we don't work with them, will be shut down. So we have to work with them too, but however, their current level of support is high, so there's not much worry there. Now we look at the actual barrier, and this is very important because you don't want to just automatically think, oh, these people in operations are not willing to help us. No, they have legitimate barriers, right? And in this circumstances, they just don't have enough resources to help you, right? Whereas you look at the legal department, they have the resources, but you're in the legal queue for review. So how can we get past this barrier with the operations stakeholder? Well, one thing I've done often is like, okay, let's start with a small pilot. Let's not just go full-blown 100% release. That way they get to understand it. They understand how to manage the program, and their level of comfort will increase. Now, we schedule an activity. So you meet with operations, and they say, okay, we'll have an operations review on this date. And you come prepared to present your program that you're going to start off with a small pilot to determine how many resources you will need. And then hopefully that will get their current level of support for the change from low to high. And finally here, you just, of course, identify your operations people. So Angela Smith is the person I'd be working with. All right, let's recap everything we've done in this module. Okay, first I talked about one of my favorite tools, the VSEM tool, which stands for Vision, Strategy, Execution, and Metrics. Team like marketing and product management will typically make something like this. They have other acronyms, GHOST I heard the other day. So they're a good resource. But the most important thing is you somehow get to this understanding of the program from the vision all the way down to the metrics for success. Then I talked about how to use a VSEM. I used my Tiger coffee machine example, and we built out that VSEM. Then we talked about the value proposition. As I said, this is a very important concept. It's important because it really gets you to understand why from the customer's point of view. And as I said earlier, I'll probably make even more videos on this. It's a promise that the product, service, or your group or company makes to that target audience. And remember, that target audience is very important. You can't target everybody. And of course, it weighs the customer's benefit versus the effort. And you remember I had this seesaw example, and if your promise, your differentiation, and your support was higher than the price, risk, and the effort, you would have actually a good value proposition. And then finally, we just covered the stakeholder analysis, a tool I use to identify teams that could threaten the success of your program. But remember, just because you haven't won them over yet, it doesn't mean they're working against you. So keep that in mind. And also, it really gives you a starting point to assess the risks of your program. Hey Tigers, I'm in the engine room of the Tiger ship. We had a little mishap, so I want to tell you what we're going to cover next section. We're going to cover the marketing mix. Then we're going to go over the lean project pathway. Then I'll discuss virtual teams, and then the balanced scorecard. So I'm going to put out the fire, and while I do that, please like and subscribe.